The air within the imposing confines of the Los Angeles federal courthouse, on that pivotal fifth day of the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, hung with a weight so profound it felt almost like a tangible entity. A thick, suffocating blanket woven from threads of apprehension, grim anticipation, and the unspoken yearning for a truth that had long been shrouded in darkness. Sunlight, filtered through the tall, arched windows that lined the courtroom walls, cast long, stark shadows across the polished expanse of the aged oak paneling, starkly illuminating the rows of expectant faces. The diligent press corps, their fingers poised like vultures above the glowing screens of their laptops. The hushed clusters of high-powered legal teams engaged in last-minute strategic whispers that seemed to snake through the silent room. And the ever-watchful, intensely focused jury, their expressions betraying a complex tapestry of grim anticipation, moral unease, and the sheer crushing weight of the unfolding revelations. For days, the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, a man who had not only defined but seemingly personified the very sound and swagger of hip-hop culture for a generation, had proceeded with a relentless, almost agonizing pace. Each witness's testimony adding another brushstroke to a portrait of alleged depravity, manipulation, and control that was becoming increasingly difficult, if not impossible, to reconcile with the carefully constructed and fiercely guarded public image of the man now facing the stark reality of federal prosecution. The prosecution, a formidable legal force spearheaded by the sharp and impeccably prepared Miss Anya Sharma, had meticulously and systematically presented a case that sought not merely to expose the flaws of a flawed individual, but to meticulously dissect and reveal Sean Combs as a calculating and manipulative figure, a veritable puppet master who had allegedly ensnared and ruthlessly exploited a string of vulnerable individuals, both male and female, within the hidden, morally bankrupt confines of a drug-saturated and sexually coercive world. Cassie Ventura's intensely personal and often emotionally wrenching 4 days of testimony had served as the harrowing and undeniably powerful cornerstone of their case. Her raw and unflinching recounting of alleged years of physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, casting a palpable pall of profound, moral unease over the entire courtroom proceedings, leaving many in attendance visibly shaken, their faith in the seemingly glamorous facade of celebrity and power irrevocably fractured. Now, a palpable sense of expectancy hung in the air, a collective bracing for further, potentially even more devastating corroboration, for additional voices to either definitively solidify the damning narrative that Miss Sharma was so methodically and strategically constructing, or perhaps in an unforeseen and dramatic twist of fate, to shatter its carefully pieced together coherence, revealing a different, perhaps equally unsettling truth. The name Jonathan Audi, a spectral presence that had previously flickered on the shadowy periphery of the sprawling Combs saga, now loomed with a renewed and undeniably unsettling significance, casting a long and ominous shadow over the proceedings. A former adult film actor whose past, seemingly outlandish and easily dismissed claims of having been a sex slave alongside Cassie Ventura, allegedly under Sean Combs's direct and often perversely specific instruction, had once been readily relegated to the realm of bizarre and self-serving pronouncements of a deeply troubled individual, particularly when juxtaposed with the lurid and sensational backdrop of his arrest following a chaotic and violent 2018 shootout. Yet, as the intensely personal and deeply disturbing echoes of Cassie's often tearful testimony continued to reverberate within the hushed confines of the courtroom, certain disquieting and undeniable parallels with Audi's earlier, seemingly unbelievable statements began to chillingly emerge, planting a persistent seed of doubt and the profoundly unsettling possibility that perhaps the dismissed ramblings of a man on the fringes weren't so entirely mad or wholly without merit after all. The defense, a formidable phalanx of high-priced legal minds meticulously assembled and strategically led by the seasoned and undeniably astute Mr. Mark Agnifilo, clung tenaciously to a carefully constructed counter-narrative, a portrayal of the tumultuous relationship between Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura as one characterized by consensual encounters, a swinger lifestyle ostensibly mutually and freely embraced by consenting adults. their intimate activities occurring within the bounds of mutual agreement, however unconventional. Their primary strategy hinged on a relentless and often aggressive dissection of the prosecution's witnesses, particularly Cassie Ventura, seeking to strategically undermine her inherent credibility by meticulously highlighting specific text messages and isolated instances that, when artfully extracted from their broader and more complex context, could be superficially interpreted as suggesting enthusiastic and willing participation in certain intimate activities that the prosecution painted as coercive and exploitative. However, the prosecution, with Ms. Sharma's unwavering focus and sharp legal acumen, expertly countered this defense tactic by relentlessly underscoring the insidious and deeply entrenched power dynamics that had allegedly permeated the entirety of the protracted relationship between Sean Combs and his much younger former partner. The alleged pervasive and often suffocating control he had exerted over Cassie's burgeoning career aspirations, her precarious financial stability, and even the very fundamental fabric of her daily existence, arguing with compelling force that true and uncoerced consent could never genuinely flourish within such a demonstrably unequal and potentially abusive environment of fear and dependency. A profound and almost absolute hush descended upon the courtroom, as the clerk's voice, clear and resonant despite the palpable tension, echoed the formal calling of the next witness to the stand. A collective and almost imperceptible intake of breath rippled through the assembled observers, a silent acknowledgement of the potential significance of the testimony that was about to unfold. Instead of the anticipated name of Ms. Carrie Morgan, Cassie Ventura's former confidant and expected corroborating witness, a visible ripple of surprise, confusion, and hushed speculation spread through the ranks of the ever-vigilant press section, their fingers momentarily pausing above their keyboards. Mr. Agnifilo, the lead defense attorney, his typically composed and outwardly confident demeanor momentarily disrupted by a flicker of what appeared to be genuine surprise, and perhaps even a subtle hint of professional unease, rose slightly in his seat, his brow furrowed in undisguised inquiry. "Your Honor," he began, his voice betraying a subtle tremor of uncertainty that had been conspicuously absent in previous days. "I was under the distinct impression, based on the pre-trial witness list formally provided by the prosecution to the defense, that Ms. Morgan was scheduled to be the next individual to take the witness stand and offer her testimony to the court." Ms. Sharma, her gaze unwavering and her posture radiating an almost imperceptible air of strategic triumph and carefully concealed confidence, offered a tight, almost predatory smile that did not quite reach the depths of her intense and focused eyes. "The prosecution, Your Honor, respectfully reserves the inherent and legally established right to adjust the order in which witnesses are called to testify before this honorable court. We firmly believe, based on recent developments and strategic considerations, that the immediate testimony of our next witness will provide crucial and highly relevant contextual understanding and potentially pivotal corroboration at this critical juncture in the ongoing proceedings." A silence, heavier and more pregnant with unspoken anticipation than any that had preceded it, descended upon the already tense courtroom. The heavy double doors at the side of the room creaked open once more, their slow and deliberate movement amplifying the already heightened sense of drama. A figure entered, not with the visibly hesitant and emotionally fragile steps of a victim reluctantly recounting past trauma, but with a guarded, almost wary resolve etched onto the lines of his face and reflected in the cautious intensity of his gaze. It was Jonathan Audi, escorted by two stern-faced and unyielding federal marshals, their authoritative presence a stark and unavoidable reminder of his current incarcerated status, and the inherent complexities surrounding his credibility as a witness. His unexpected appearance was akin to a high-stakes wildcard being dramatically thrown onto the meticulously arranged legal playing field. A potentially volatile and unpredictable element introduced into the prosecution's carefully orchestrated and strategically timed strategy. Audi's well-documented past arrest, his ongoing incarceration in a Florida jail facility on serious and entirely unrelated criminal charges, undeniably cast a significant and potentially damaging shadow over his inherent credibility and reliability as an objective witness in this high-profile federal trial. A vulnerability that the astute and strategically opportunistic Mr. Agnifilo would undoubtedly and ruthlessly exploit during his upcoming and highly anticipated cross-examination. Yet, the prosecution, fully aware of these inherent risks, had clearly made a calculated and potentially game-changing decision, believing that Jonathan Audi's testimony held a crucial and perhaps missing key, a potentially vital piece of the intricate puzzle that could further and more definitively implicate Sean Combs in the alleged pervasive and deeply disturbing pattern of coercive, manipulative, and exploitative behavior that lay at the very heart of the government's case against him. As Jonathan Audi took the witness stand, his eyes darting nervously around